So in this video, I'm going to show you how to use Illustrator to draw trusses. I'm going to talk about some of the problems you might have, and then I'm going to show you another video where I've talked about how to use Illustrator to draw trusses. So the first thing we're going to do, after you've gone through the pain of logging into Illustrator, which I have covered in a separate video, you're going to go to Create New. When I go to Create New, the first thing is I want to use Web. And the reason for that is because when you use Web, do you see how it says RGB color? If I go to something like Print, it says CYMK color. The laser cutter, it doesn't know about CYMK, it only knows about RGB. Right? We want red to be our cutting color, and that's it. If you use CYMK, there's no red. It has to guess at what it means by red, and then the laser cutter won't know what's going on, and you're going to have a bad time. The other thing is, I like to use millimeters. So let's repeat. The first, I'm going to even start from scratch. We're going to create new. We're going to go to Web because we want RGB color. Then I'm going to change it to millimeters. Now, the biggest that we can use in our laser cutter is 600 by 300. And that's not a bad place to start, especially if your teacher is making you put multiple drawings on the one sheet, which is what I would do because that would save me effort. But your teacher might have told you other dimensions for your maximum dimension. Then I'm going to go Create. And any second now we should see a document show up. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is working in a workspace. I like to use a different workspace to what is shown up here. So I'm going to go to Window, Workspace, Essentials Classic. I'm going to say that again. So up the top, right, I have File, Edit, Object, Type, Select, Effect, View, and then here we go, Windows, the second one, last one. I click Window, Workspace, Essentials Classic. Now, the reason I like Essentials Classic is because it's got these three things up here. It's got the colors, it's got the stroke weight, and it has this line profile that we're going to worry about in a second. Now this properties window, me personally, I never use that, so I'm going to close that one down. Now there are a couple of things I really like to use. I like to use layers, and I like to use alignment, bless you. But for the moment, what we just want to do is we want to go to Window, Workspace, Essentials Classic. Now, if I'm going to make a truss, well, there's lots of different ways that I can make my shapes. And so this is what makes Illustrator hard, is it's very hard to say, I just want a line that starts here and goes here. That's what AutoCAD does really well. It says I want a line that starts here and just does the thing. Whereas with Illustrator, you kind of have to draw and move your shapes around. And for a lot of people who don't know how to use either, it can be more intuitive to use Illustrator, but you know, there's some problems going on with it as well. So what we're going to do first is we're going to just try and make a very simple Warren truss, right? Not the former liberal politician. We're going to make a kind of shape that is good at, it's a very efficient way of taking load. So this is the sort of truss that we see on the Tom Ugley's bridge. So I'm going to make this out of triangles. Now you'll see that, well, for starters, there's no triangle tool, right? There's nothing that looks like a triangle in our tool drawers here. But if you look at the fourth one down, you should see a rectangle or a circle or something like that. There's a drawer here that could have different shapes. But if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, there's a drawer that's going to have different shape tools. The problem is, there's still nothing there that says triangle. So does anyone have an idea what we might use? Okay, just checking. No one's got any clues? Yep, there we go. Well, Polygon, exactly right. Polygon just means many sides. So polygon is anything from a triangle to a hexagon to an octagon to a nonagon, dodecagon, any gon you want. Okay, so I'm going to go to Polygon. And when I click Polygon, it says, how many sides you want? I want 600 sides. No, okay, that would be too many. I want 3 sides, and then it says, okay, how big do you want your triangle to be? Well, okay, I don't really know yet, but I might say, well, I've looked at Mr. Zeech's, he's got a truss here, and I say, well, I look at that, and it's probably about 50 millimeters, right? It's not, but well, you tell me your size, sir.
About 90.
90, okay, 90. So I've gone with a radius, mind you, a radius of 90. So it's from the center, from here around, so from that distance to, from there to there. So I think 50 is too big.
Maybe 40.
45. Okay, so because we were thinking maybe mixing up radius and diameter. Anyway, so the point is I'm going to go with 45. Split the difference. Okay, now what we've got here is the shape that I have. It's an equilateral triangle. That's perfect because we want to make a Warren truss. Okay, so then what I can try and do is I want to make a slightly bigger version of that to be the outside of my triangle. Okay, so that's fine. So let's say, well, we want ours to be 7 mil wide. Bless you again. So what we're going to do is we're going to align that shape to the center of our workspace. So what we're going to use is the align tool. Now, we don't have that already on our toolkit here. So what we're going to go to is Window and then Align. So Window, and we're going to get the Align tool. And I'm going to put that in this drawer so it doesn't fly away when I close it. You don't have to do that, but that's what I'm going to do. Now I'm just going to remove it just so you can see how to work that from here. I've just deleted it. I'm going to go to Window, Align. If you're keen, you can press Shift F7. And learning the hotkeys is really good, but I don't. I just put it in the toolkit and then I use it all the time. So Shift F7. And I'm going to, so I can find it, I'm going to drag it into this bar over here. So I'll know where it is every time. Now, the Align tool is this one here. It's the one with sort of these two sort of horizontal bar graph looking things. Now the thing is, when I do that, you're not going to see any options. So I'm going to show it what it looks like to you, which is hide options. That's probably what it looks like when you open it. And if you don't see anything down the bottom, you need to go to this, I think they call this a hamburger button with these 3 lines, 1, 2, 3. And when you do that, show options. What you'll have is align to. We want to align to the artboard. That white space, that white rectangle, that's our artboard, and I want to center things right in the center of that artboard. Okay. So now, when I move this around, do you see how it's going to move around relative to the artboard, to the top or bottom or the middle or the sides of the artboard? And I'm going to start by putting this in the center of my artboard. Now, the next thing is I want to think about, well, okay, what is the gap between this triangle and the next triangle? The gap between this triangle and the next triangle, we're saying that we want it to be a 7 millimeter square. 7 mil, we're using 6 mil ply, 7 mil ply?
That looks like about 6,
Yeah, okay, so we'll go 6 mil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy, and I'm just going to move the whole thing so that 6 millimeters down from where I need to be. I'm just thinking about how we want to do it. Okay, before we make a copy, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of this triangle really easily. To make a copy of a triangle, I press the Alt key and I just make copies. Okay, so I just check that you guys should all have a triangle on your board. If you don't have a triangle on your shape, you need to let the teacher know. And it looks like most of you guys have got a triangle and that you've set a radius. You going to take a crack? Okay. So, now that I've made all those copies, I actually want a copy that is touching these two sides. So what I do is I press Alt and I just drag it to the point where it's touching, like that. But now I want to have, so I'll just show that one again. So I'm going to press Alt and then I'm going to drag it just to the point where it's touching. Press Alt and drag it to the point where it's touching, and that'll make a copy for me. I don't know if you probably can do that in Illustrator, in AutoCAD. I wouldn't do that though. I would just use the copy command. Okay, now I want to move it an exact amount. There's a couple of ways I could do that. One way I could do that is up the top here, when you use the Essential Classic space, there's something called Transform. And when I go to Transform, I can move the coordinates or the size of my shape. So I can see that my triangle is 67.5 millimeters, and I can tell you the X and Y positions of that. Just like in maths, we use X and Y. X is the flat dimension, the left and right dimension. Y, it's the Y flies high. Y is the vertical component. Now, what I want to do is I want to move it 7 millimeters along, or 6 millimeters along. One thing I could do is I could just add +6 here. I could just do that. That's an option. But what I generally do is I press Control-Shift-M and I move the object. Control-Shift-M. If you don't want to do that, you can go to Object and you can go to Transform Move. But me, I have just memorized that one. Control-Shift-M is pretty easy for me to remember. And I'm just going to go Control-Shift-M. Now I want to move it. I want to move it exactly 6 millimeters, but to the left. And in Illustrator, it assumes that a positive number is going to go to the right. And if you want to go to the left like Beyonce, you have to go negative, right? Big Beyonce fan, big fan of that song. Anyway, so we're going to go to -6 millimeters. And then I can choose to copy the triangle. Let's see what happens if I copy it. See how it makes an extra copy of that triangle? Now that could be useful. We might maybe want an extra copy of that triangle. Bless you. Okay, now the thing is here is how do I make this object a little bit bigger? How do I get to the 6 mil here? Well, there's a couple of ways. Okay, first of all, I want to zoom in. To zoom in, I use Control and plus. Control and plus is going to let me zoom in. What I could do here is I could just make a lot of different shapes and join them. But what I probably would do is say, I want to have a 6 millimeter block. I'm just going to draw a little rectangle that is going to be 6 by 6. Some people might call that a square, but as far as Illustrator is concerned, they call it a rectangle. And so now I've got this is my block. So I'm going to say, well, my shape is going to be on the outside of this. So I'm going to move that one. And then how do I make a copy? Can anyone remember how I make a copy? Alt. Alt will let me make a copy of that, and I just drag that along. Now, for us, because this is just a class project, we don't need to be super accurate. If this is out by a millimeter or two, well, millimeters a fair bit, but if this is out by even a millimeter, we're not going to be, it's not going to be the end of the world. So we don't need to be too upset if it's not perfect. It'd be nice if it's perfect, but don't worry too much if things aren't exactly right. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use this pen tool, and I'm going to use the pen tool to draw the outside of my shape. Now, I might decide that I don't really like this, but this is really just me finding a way of making something that works. Okay, so I've got what we call that, a trapezium, right? The trapezium is going to be the outside of my shape. Problem is, you've noticed that everything else has disappeared. Why has everything else disappeared? Anyone? Exactly. And this shape has a color, right? Well, I hadn't selected anything. That was a bit odd. This shape has a color, right? At the moment, that shape is white. Well, it was white before I made it red. Because it's filled in, you can't see anything behind there. But I can delete that. I can remove the fill and give it no fill, and now I can see my shape. Now, I might look at that and say, oh, it's not really what I wanted it to look like. And that's okay. If you don't want it to look like that, you now have these two arrows where you can drag the shape and make it look different. So what I can do, first of all, I'm going to select. So we have these two tools, right? We have the selection tool and the direct selection tool. The selection tool is good for picking up a whole shape. If I want to pick up this whole square and move it, I want to use the the selection tool, which is V, right? Which V is good because it's right in the middle of your keyboard. And so I can get rid of these squares. But let's say I want to take part of this shape and move it around. Let's say in the case of these squares, I can press A, and so V and A both kind of look a bit like an arrow, but I can press A, and when I press A, I can actually move part of the shape, and I can directly select the parts of the shape and make it look like whatever I want. So that's not all that useful for that square, but what I want to do here is I want to move this shape out until it's like, oh yeah, that looks a bit better. That's closer to what I want it to look like. Now, part of me says, oh, if I was doing this in Illustrator, it would look perfect. And this looks a little bit less than what I would like. But I can live with this. I can live with this. This is a Year 9 project, not a Year 11 project. Year 11, I'd be expecting AutoCAD. Okay, so now I'm going to take another rectangle. But this rectangle I'm going to take, I need to put these gaps in the top. I need some upside down triangles. Did I say rectangles? I think I did. Okay, so I'm going to click some of these triangles. I've got a triangle, but it's not the right way. I want it to go the other way around. So what am I going to do? I'm going to Do you see how if I move that around, I got this rotating sign? Do you see that? I'll just, so when I click on it, if I go up to the corners, any of the corners, you see there's this little sort of, it's a curved arrow, curved thing with two arrows, and I can just drag it and move it around. Now, that's fine if I need to do, like if I just want to use my eye to say where it should go. But if instead, if I wanted to rotate it exactly, I can press R. What do you think R stands for?
Rotate.
I'm pretty sure that's what it stands for. And then I can say I want it to rotate at 180 degrees. And that might work better for you. That might be how you want to approach it. Now the problem is here, you can see this triangle too big. So what I might do is I might shrink this triangle down. But when I do that, do you see how it's a distorted shape? I don't really like that distorted shape. So instead, I'm going to, there's a couple of ways I can change it. I could hold shift while I do that. And if I hold shift while I do that, it will make sure it keeps the shape the same. That's one way I can do that. Another way I can do it is I can go to transform and I can play around with the shape here. So I can say that the change in shape happens from the middle of the object. So I can shrink it down from the middle, or I can do it from the top left or the bottom right. But for the moment, I like this method, which is I just grab it and I hold shift, and that makes sure that it's going to stay an equilateral triangle. And I'm pretty happy with that. Let me show you that again from scratch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this triangle by pressing what button? Alt. And then how am I going to rotate? Anyone? I've got two ways to rotate. Excellent. That's exactly right. The corners. Now with the corners, if I wanted to move around in exact amounts, if I press shift, it'll make sure that it goes in like exact units of 25 degrees. Or I'll just do it again. I can press R and I can specify the angle. I'm then going to move it to where I want it to go, pretty much. That'll do. And then I can, to shrink it, what do? I just grab it and move it. But what do I need to do to make sure it stays in the right position? Excellent. You guys are great. Got this. So in this case, because I've got the top in the right spot, I'm just going to shift the bottom. Okay, so let's just say for the moment that I'm happy with this shape and I'm ready to print. Well, this is not going to print. And the reason it's not going to print is because it's not red. Actually, what it'll do is it'll print, it'll burn the shape into the timber. It looks exactly like this. It won't cut through the timber though. And we want it to cut through the timber. Now, at this point, your teacher in Year 9 will probably say, don't worry, I can take care of it. But let's just teach you what to do to maybe help out. So there's two things that we need to focus on, or maybe three. So we need the color, it needs to be uniform, and it needs to be very, very thin. So it needs to be RGB red, it needs to be 0.001 wide, or have a stroke weight of 0.001, and we need to make it a uniform width profile. Now, I will tell you that this is my trade secret. This is what makes me valuable in the TAS staff room, is I'm the only one who knows how to make the variable width profile and fix that up. And I know that because I called the guy, there was a help number on the laser cutter, and I called that guy and I said, it's not working. And he said, are you using Illustrator? I said, I am. And he says, there's this problem that only happens in Illustrator. It's the variable width profile. So what you need to do when you have that problem show up is you go to Basic and you change it to some other brush. It doesn't matter what you go to, you just change it to anything else, and then the uniform will show up. So let's say that uniform's not here, right? That won't laser cut, right? That won't laser cut. So what you need to do is you need to go to Basic, and then once you go to Basic, you can change it to uniform. Yeah? So if you don't see uniform for some reason, you can change it to something else, then to Basic, and then uniform, and then you too can be the most valuable person when it comes to laser cutting in your workplace. Okay, then I'm giving away that secret. Maybe that wasn't very, very wise. Okay, so then what we're going to do is we're going to set the color to red, RGB red. If it doesn't say RGB red, you've done something wrong, and you need to ask the teacher and we need to start again. Well, maybe we can copy some stuff over. And then you need to set the width of your diagram to 0.001. Now, when you do that, it doesn't look red. Do you notice it doesn't look red? It looks blue. Now, some of you won't even be able to see on the board. Oh, okay, you can see. But that line's disappeared. Because it's so thin, it doesn't show up. On your Mac, if you guys, you can all download this for free, right? As students in New South Wales, you can all get Illustrator for free. You can all get AutoCAD for free. AutoCAD does run out after 2 years, so you're probably better off getting it like at study or 11. Anyway, don't quote me on that. Okay, so, but you see how when I select it all looks blue. That's because I'm in a blue layer. Right? I won't go into too much into layers, but there's a whole bunch of layers, and I could make a green layer, a pink layer, a blue layer. All of this stuff has all been drawn on the same sheet of paper. And I can put more plastic pieces of paper on top, and I can draw lots of different things that I can turn off and on. I'm not going to go into layers too much. I've covered layers in other videos. Layers can be really helpful. But the reason why this doesn't look red is because I'm selecting it on a blue layer. If I make it 0.1, looks clearly red, right? But we want to set it to a really thin line of 0.001. Okay, so that's how we can draw a truss. Now, the thing I can hear a lot of people thinking is, okay, that's all well and good if you want to draw equilateral triangles, but what if I don't want to draw an equilateral triangle? What if I want to draw a right angle triangle? Well, then I can use the direct selection tool, and I can drag that across, and I can turn that into a triangle. Okay, so now I want to create a new triangle. And so, sir, that's great. I know how to make a triangle. I know how to rotate the triangle. But what I want is an actual mirror of that one. How do you think I could make a mirror of that triangle? M? MI would work on AutoCAD, but not here. Here we want to go to Object, and we want to go to Transform, and we want to go, maths teachers will like this, they call it a reflection. I guess that's what you do in the mirror. Anyway, and I can copy it, so now I have two. Yeah, I can copy it or I don't have to copy. And then that way, if I wanted to do, so if I wanted mine to look like Tom Ugly's bridge, right, then it has right angle triangles instead of equilateral triangles. And you could play around with that and shrink these down until they look about right. Now, for this project, because we don't need it to be perfect, we're happy for it to be a little bit wonky. Illustrator is a really good tool. Illustrator prints really nicely on the laser cutter. But Autodesk's AutoCAD, it is the much better tool if you want exact values. If you want something to look exactly what you specify, then AutoCAD is the tool you want. Now, I have a video that goes into detail on how to use AutoCAD, but I'm going to suggest that unless you're really keen on this is what I plan on doing for a living, because AutoCAD is a really valuable skill, AutoCAD is hard for the teacher to print. I always struggle to print out AutoCAD. I mean, it's always an additional 5 minutes of effort for me to print out one of these drawings. But AutoCAD is a real skill, and I have 3 videos on how to use AutoCAD. But it's very different in how it produces shapes. And I think that's enough for you guys to get going. Good luck, everyone.
Cool. Thank you, Mr. Punzet.